In this video, we'll be talking about data analysis in first grade. There's 3 TEKS for data analysis, 1.8a, b, and c. We're going to start out by having the students collect, sort, and organize data. We want to make sure that when students are doing this collecting and sorting that we're only working with 3 categories in first grade. So we don't need graphs that have 5 and 6 different things on them. 3 is the most according to the TEK. So when we start talking about collecting and sorting, students can very easily survey other students. They can fill in charts, tally marks in order to start collecting the data. When we collect data in tables and charts kind of already formulated for them, you tend to get something that looks like this. If we were doing favorite types of candy, you might have something that looks similar, and it might say something like M&M's, Skittles, and Sour Patch Kids. And then they go around and they're getting their tally marks and so on. By always having the students work through gathering data this way, the data is already sorted for them. So we want to make sure that we give the students the opportunity to sort data. We want to collect it, but we also want the opportunity for them to sort. So a suggestion that you could use is having students say that we were doing the same thing with the M&Ms, the Skittles, and the Sour Patch Kids. Students could have little pictures of candy wrappers or shoe colors, whatever it might be, whatever their favorite might be, ice cream, number of kids in a family, and somehow we want to very randomly collect that data. So let's say, for example, we had students go up and pick your favorite type of candy. So they go and pick their favorite type of candy and they drop the type of candy in the bag that they like the most. So when that information or those little pieces are dumped out, this might be what we get. And so we might start asking the students, which one is the most, which one is the least, the same types of questions, and hopefully we're guiding them to understanding, I don't know, I can't tell. So we want to say, well, what could we do? And this is where we want to guide them to doing the sorting. We've collected, but now we need to sort. So we could ask them, how could we organize or sort this information? And they could say, oh, put the light candies together. So we put the light candies together, but we're not going to line things up and start making it look like a graph. And we can go through and start asking those same questions again. Can we tell which one's the most, how much more something has? Guiding them eventually towards that graph, that if we organize it in a more systematic way, we're going to be able to tell information about that graph a whole lot easier. So students could then take this information and create a type of graph that they have. So we're going to go back to that in just a second. Students will want to be using tally marks and T-charts. So here's just a pretty simple picture of using popsicle sticks to practice that strategy of making those tally marks and gathering the data. You can see that these are just a variety of colors in a baggie, and the kids are just creating tally marks. So this is just a quick way that they could practice the idea of tally marks. So once the students have collected and sorted and organized their data, we want to create graphs. So there's 2 types of graphs in first grade. Students can create a picture graph. So it might be something that looks like one of these type pictures. And if you'll notice that we have our graphs going in both directions, we have horizontal graphs and we have vertical graphs. And we also want the students in first grade to create bar type graphs. Bar type graphs are a little bit different than a bar graph. Bar type graphs are actually giving you these very distinct, this is 1, this is 2, where a bar graph wouldn't have these little lines in between designating 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. So these are examples of bar type graphs that they could use. So let's go back to our data that we collected about the candy and create a very simple picture graph that the kids could use in order to help them determine information about the candy that was liked. So students could then just take this, the teacher could model, and we're doing picture graphs. And looking at this, I would suggest that all the pictures are the same size. That'll help the students be able to line them up a little bit better, but as the teacher, we can kind of help them with that. So here we've created a very simple picture graph that the kids could use in order to organize that data a little bit better and create a picture graph. A bar type graph for the same information might look like this. These are just sticky notes, but it gives us the idea that these are very individual pieces. We're not trying to stick them together. I can count the individual spots. I'm not relying on any type of axis on the side in order to help provide me a number. I can actually count these and know that there's 4. I don't have to look to the side for numbers. So this would be an example of a bar type graph. This one is going vertically for that. Okay. For all of our graphs in first grade, each picture or each bar is going to represent 1. We don't have to have any type of interval happening. We don't need any type of key to help them with that. So the last part of our TEKS is about students drawing conclusions, generating and answering questions for the graphs. So from this data, when the students create their bar graph, it would be a really good thing to just stop and let them just start noticing and wondering things about the graph. We don't have to jump into the students, just start answering which one's the most, which one's the least. We want the students to just be able to notice what kind of things do they notice about the graph, and that's their drawing conclusions. So you can just stop, display the graph, and ask the students, what do you notice? And let them tell you, let them say, Sour Patch Kids is the tallest, or Sour Patch Kids is the most, and we can follow up with those questions. How do you know it's the most? And let the students tell you from there. So that's going to allow them to do some analyzing of the graph, interpreting the graph. We could make predictions from the graph. We can draw conclusions, which is what the TEK is asking us to do. From that, we also want the students to generate their own questions. We're probably going to need to spend some time asking questions before they're ready to start generating, so that they just hear, what does that mean when I have to generate a question? What kinds of questions can I ask from a graph? So as teachers, we want to make sure that we ask 3 types of questions. 1, questions that the answers are right there. How many students like Sour Patch Kids? And the kids can very easily count. I also want to ask questions that have the students compare 2 pieces of data within the graph. How many more students like M&Ms than Skittles? So I can do that comparison of the 2. The last thing is looking at students doing some inferring. If I was a teacher and I was planning a party, which type of candy should I probably have the most of in order for a lot of kids to really enjoy the candy that's there? So the students could then say, oh, I think it's Sour Patch. Well, why do you think Sour Patch is the one the teacher really needs to purchase the most of? Well, because it's the most. And that's where we want to guide the students for that. So the graphing, we want the students to collect, sort, and organize, make their 2 types of graphs, and then do their drawing conclusions. If you have any questions about these TEKS, you can refer to your instructional talk page, or you can contact us. Thanks so much.